Hello and thank you for joining me. This is Sierra from Sierra T Designs, and today I have for you week 7 of my 12 weeks of Christmas cards. So let's jump right in. So for this card I did opt to do something pretty non-traditional, which you would have seen from the thumbnail. I don't think that you can only use Christmas style things on Christmas cards. That's my opinion, of course, but this is kind of my thought process there. So I am going to use the Simon Says stamp Radiant Hearts stencil as my background, and here you can see I'm picking out some foams for my oxide blending, and I am going to create 2 cards, though I'm only going to show you one in the video because they're created the exact same. Every step that I did outside of choosing different colors is going to be the exact same. So here I'm going to blend in 3 blues. I'm kind of going for a little bit of a neutral Christmas card for this one that I'm going to show you in my making of. And I'm going to use Tumbled Glass, Speckled Egg, and Broken China Distress Oxides. I have pretty well fallen in love with Speckled Egg. It's one of my favorite colors of the Oxide line so far. I mean, he's bringing out new ones, Tim Holtz is, and I'm excited to see the newest one, that beautiful green, but of the ones that have come out so far, I find that Speckled Egg is the one I use the most, and I just love this color. It's stunning. And I'm just going to blend these 3 oxides into the stencil, kind of going back and forth between the colors. This will create a pretty beautiful blend because they are, of course, all blue-ish shades, although Speckled Egg can take on quite a color depending on what you've put it next to. But I thought it kind of looked really pretty with these other 2 blues. And I just blend back and forth through the stencil until I like how the blend is looking. Now, it doesn't need to be a perfect blend. I am going to cover it, but I did kind of work it back and forth because I did want a little bit of color in each of them. And of course the Tumbled Glass is going to get covered up a little bit later in the card. Then I brought in some, I did also put Pixie Spray on the back of the stencil so that it wouldn't go anywhere while I was blending, and when I was using, this is the Iridscent Glitz Glitter Gel by Gink K. This is by far my favorite of the Glitz Glitter Gels, and you'd be surprised at how hard it is to find. I got this tiny jar in one of the Simon Says Stamp monthly kits a while back, and it's the only one I have, and it's pretty well empty. I'm scraping the bottom here, and I've been trying to find one, and I cannot find one in stock in any of the stores that I normally shop at, so this is going to be kind of interesting. And then I just used a gift card here just to kind of scrape it across the card. You guys know that I like to use what I have, and that's what I have, so that's what I'm using. And so I kind of wanted to create a card that wasn't what you would normally use in a Christmas card. Now here's the second blend. I didn't show you this because it's the exact same. And in this one I used Picked Raspberry, Wilted Violet, Mermaid, Lagoon, and Cracked Pistachio, and the same Glitz Glitter Gel. And then I just colored them in. And now I've brought out a really cute elf. This is from a stamp set that Simon Says Stamp no longer sells. This is the Naughty and Nice Elves. They don't carry it anymore, but you could literally put anybody, like any cartoon or any Christmas character or anything in this spot of this elf. This is just who I chose to put there because I thought it was adorable. But you could put anything there. You could use this design easily not to be a Christmas card as well. Although I just really wanted to show that you can use the supplies you have in your stash to do anything. I mean, it doesn't have to be snowflakes every time, although I do love my snowflakes, but it doesn't have to be snowflakes. And now granted, if you are very into traditional Christmas cards, this may not be your thing, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. It's amazing to have people who like different things so that we can showcase different things in our cards. We don't all have to like the exact same things, and I think that's one thing that's wonderful about card making, is that there's so many different things you can create and so many ways to create them that it makes somebody happy regardless. So I did use some Gink K amalgam ink to stamp down my images because I wanted to Copic color them, and I have this sped up quite a bit. I don't color this quickly normally, and I'm going to walk you through the colors here. So I have E57 and E27, and that's what I did the little bench in. And then I brought in what I chose to use a skin tone. And I have, what did I use for that? E50 and E21. And then I'm also going to bring in some R22 as just a little bit of a pink highlight. I think I add it on the cheeks, a little bit on the nose, and a little bit on the ears, kind of thinking that he'd be quite rosy, this little elf. And then I blended it out again with my lightest color, which was the E50. And I did color this one. I'm only going to show you the coloring on this one, although I colored both. The other one I actually chose to go more neutral colors because the background was so colorful, and I'll walk you through those colors here in a minute. But for this one, I chose to go very Christmas color-esque. So yellowy golds, red, green, a little bit of brown, a little bit of gray, just to kind of tie it together. So I did choose to use E79 and E49 for the hair and his shoes. And then I'm going to use Y08 and Y19. Oh, sorry, I'm going to show you just the shading of the hair there. And then I'm going to use, this is my kind of a golden yellow color, and I kind of used that to accent the bell in his hat and the ribbon on the gift. Now you could go a bit of a darker goldy yellow color. I opted to kind of go bright because on the blue background, which is one I showed you, I kind of was trying for a bit of a more traditional Christmas color palette with a very non-traditional card style. So it was kind of, would say Christmas more than my second card is going to say. It was kind of my thought process there. So I also have G14 and G05, and then the red that I'm going to bring in for the rest of his clothing is going to be R14 and R05. And then I also bring in neutral gray 3 and 5 to color in the gift. Just because I didn't want to introduce any new colors, so I just opted for some neutral grays. So on the second one, I'm just going to quickly walk you through the colors. You're not going to see any of the coloring on that one, because I didn't think you needed to watch me color both of them. But I used C1, so cool gray 1, cool gray 0, neutral gray 3, neutral gray 5. And then for the gift, I kind of went with a pastel color palette, and I went BG15, V15, RV02, and YG11, just in case you wanted to know the colors I actually used on that gift. You're not going to see me color it, but I thought that people like to know what colors I used, and so yeah. This was also on my blog, guys. If you ever are curious about what I've used and I didn't say it well enough on the video, you can always go check out my blog. It's always linked and listed down below as the first thing in my description. So if you ever want to check out the details, or I went through the numbers of my Copics too quickly, you can always go over there and check it out, and you'll be able to see them. So I did opt to do two because I wanted to do one with a more traditional Christmas palette, though it's not a traditional design, and then one a bit more colorful. So the second one is almost a rainbow kind of color palette, in a kind of a muted tone. It's just because that's what I lean towards. I lean towards bright colors. I lean towards very vibrant generally, and then I colored the elf in neutrals so that the background stood out a bit more. Whereas on the blue background, which is the one I'm kind of showing you, the elf stands out more. So it kind of depends on what kind of a look you're going for. So then I have the dies for this set as well. So I'm just trimmed down the cardstock there, and I just ran it through my Gemini Go. And I'm just going to pop it out, and here I'm going to kind of just show you him sitting on top of the background. Now, I think these turned out pretty cute, but it's all perspective. Again, if you don't like non-traditional cards, you may not enjoy this design, and that's perfectly okay. So I did opt to white heat emboss my sentiment, and it's just a small Merry Christmas sentiment. And I chose to emboss it on the same black cardstock that I used to mat this panel, just so that I could tie in more of that black cardstock. Because the only place I really have black in this card is the mat, and a little bit in the outline of the image, but the outline is quite thin. So I did really want to kind of tie that in a little bit more. So I'm just going to white heat emboss this with some Brutus Monroe Alabaster White embossing powder, which is my favorite white embossing powder. So far anyway, I mean, that's kind of the only one I've ever really tried, so it's my favorite, but it's a pretty amazing embossing powder. So I heated that until it was smooth and melted, and now I'm going to kind of cut these out to be labels. So I've been kind of eyeballing this. You could absolutely bring in a die. I was too lazy to do that because this is a very small sentiment, and lining them up I always seem to struggle. But I have found if I line up the edge of my words to the plastic piece in my trimmer, it makes it really easy to kind of line up both sides, and it looks straight. So I've kind of been doing that recently to line up some of my labels. And now we're going to start gluing this guy together. So I'm going to glue down my black mat, which is cut to 1/8 of an inch smaller than my A2 sized base, and my Oxide blended panel is 1/8 of an inch smaller than my black mat. And again, if you ever need the measurements again, it's all on my blog, so you can by all means go and check that out and see all the measurements and all the Copics I've used, and a brief rundown of how I've made the card. And I really kind of wanted this sentiment to ground my image. I didn't want the elf to kind of be floating, to look like nothing was kind of holding him where he was. But I didn't want him sitting on the bottom of the page either, because then I felt he was a bit low in the design. So that's another reason that I did the labels, and I just glued them down flat. I am going to prop up my elf with some super thin foam squares. These are the thin 3D foam squares. I've fallen in love with these. They add a small amount of dimension, so that's wonderful, but not so much dimension that the elf is quite far off the page. So I have been loving these. And everything I use will be linked and listed down below, as long as it's something you can purchase. As I did say, the elves are not available at this point, but you could put in anything here. I mean, replace it with some snowmen, replace it with anything, really. I mean, this could be a Valentine's Day card if that's the way you wanted to lean instead. And we may make a card similar to this when we do Valentine's, but that's a few months away, so we're working on Christmas right now. But I really just wanted to showcase that you can use anything that you own to make a stunning Christmas card. It doesn't have to be snowflakes every time, or, certain Christmas things every time. You can make whatever you want, and it's going to be a stunning card. And I don't think that any of the people I would send a card to would be like, oh, this is not a Christmas card. Like, I don't think anybody would say that to me. I think that they would just appreciate the thought and love that I had gone out of my way to make something for them. So I did opt to bring in my white Jelly Roll pen, and I'm just kind of adding white highlights where I think they'll look good. There's no rhyme or reason to where I'm putting them, honestly. I'm not following any kind of highlight to where the light would hit or anything like that. It's just where I like it and where I think it'll look good, and sometimes it's not that great, and sometimes it turns out pretty great. So I think it's kind of a trial and error situation. But I think that I don't know. I like how this card turned out. If you didn't, that's perfectly okay. Like, it's just as I said, everybody's opinion is welcome, and you don't have to like everything that I create. That's perfectly okay. But maybe you learned something from this, and that would be wonderful too. So here I'm just going to hold them both up in the light so you can just see all of the shimmer in that background and kind of see the elves close up. And yeah, so I'd love to hear what you think. If you leave me a comment, like this video if you liked it, and consider subscribing if you haven't already. I'd love to have you back, and I'll see you guys again very soon. Thank you so much, guys. Bye-bye.